1968. Madison Square Garden. 15 minutes before showtime. Backstage, Johnny Cash stands in front of a mirror that doesn't lie anymore. His hands shake so hard he can't button the black shirt people expect to see under the lights. In his pocket, 3 pills, different colors, the same promise. He's swallowed them for years just to walk on stage without collapsing. A knock cuts through the room. 5 minutes, Johnny. He looks at his reflection and barely recognizes the man staring back. 36 years old. 150 pounds on a 6'2" frame. Cheekbones sharp, eyes hollow. 2 weeks ago, he woke up in a Memphis hotel he didn't remember booking, with no memory of how he got there. And 3 hours ago, the last person who ever stood between him and the bottom walked away. June Carter said no, not gently, not temporarily. No. Now the pills feel heavier than the guitar. The crowd outside is roaring, hungry for the legend. But the man in the mirror knows the truth. If he swallows what's in his pocket, he'll survive the night and lose himself forever. If he doesn't, the stage might finish what the drugs already started. Johnny Cash has 5 minutes to choose which version of himself walks out alive. Let us know where you're watching from, and we hope you enjoy the story. Las Vegas made everything look clean. Backstage, it smelled of sweat, stale cigarettes, and hairspray. Johnny Cash stood in a corridor of coiled cables, black suit, black boots, the famous calm held together by habit. From the stage, he was a monument. Up close, his hands wouldn't stop moving. June Carter threaded through musicians with a paper cup of coffee. They'd crossed paths for years, same circuits, same quick hellos. But tonight, the air finally settled. "You're shaking," she said. Not tender, not mean, just factual. He tried a smile. Long day. June's life was already split open. Divorced, raising Carlene, guarding the Carter name. People called her the clean one. Johnny had 4 daughters and a marriage collapsing, and a dependence that began with pills handed out like rations and now ruled him. Some days, he swallowed more than 100. On the southern tour, the miles blurred into motel lamps. Then he vanished. No note, no call, an empty seat where he'd been. 3 days later, June found him outside Tulsa by asking who'd paid cash and looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. In the room, Johnny lay fully dressed, skin gray, bottles and torn foil across the carpet. His guitar case sat open, as if the music had stepped out and left him behind. She didn't call an ambulance. She didn't stage a scene. She locked the door, pulled the curtains, and sat until his breathing steadied. She canceled shows with the promoters, saying laryngitis, like it explained everything. When he came around, she fed him broth from a spoon, patient as a nurse who refuses applause. His first clear question was a whisper. "Why didn't you go?" June kept her eyes on him. "I don't care about Johnny Cash," she said. "But Johnny, the Arkansas boy who's afraid of the dark, I care about him." A month later, he came to her dressing room with an acoustic guitar and eyes that looked bruised from the inside. He played a new song, a melody that felt like a warning and a promise at once. "Ring of Fire," he said, then, too quickly, added that Merle Kilgore wrote it. June accepted the story because it was safer to. Only later would she learn Johnny had asked Merle to sign it, terrified she'd hear an open confession from a married man, and shut the door forever. December 1966 didn't wait for anyone to be ready. Starkville, Mississippi. A stop, a search, and 1,163 pills in his guitar case, smuggled up from Mexico beside strings and picks like they belonged. In court, he expected condemnation. He got probation, flashes, whispers. Outside the courthouse, he saw June waiting and braced for disgust. She only said, "Get in. I'm taking you home to your kids." He started to give her his address. She drove past it, heading for her mother's house in Tennessee, where the Carter family could watch him with clear eyes. Behind them, the industry kept moving. Labels, agents, venues, everyone knowing, everyone looking away because he sold records. Johnny stared out at Winterfields and felt something unfamiliar under the ache. Not rescue, not romance, just a woman refusing to let him die neatly in public. January 1967 arrived with paperwork and smiles sharp as razors. In Nashville, promoters talked about a tour that would dwarf anything country music had dared. 112 dates in 6 months. Arenas and armories stitched together by highways and exhaustion. The numbers on the contract looked unreal. Guarantees, percentages, bonuses. Money that could buy silence from newspapers and comfort for families. June's manager repeated one figure like scripture: $300,000. For a woman in country music, it was a small revolution. Johnny sat in the meeting wearing black, jaw clenched, eyes bright in the wrong way. He kept tapping the table as if the wood might hand him balance. He'd been clean in the way desperate men define it. Less chaos, fewer headlines, but June could see the truth in his collarbones, in the way his belt kept finding new holes. 2, sometimes 3 pounds gone each week. He was operating on chemistry and willpower, and the first one was winning. Late that night, she went to his hotel expecting the usual dance, a joke, a song, an almost touch that never became a promise. He opened the door with that crooked charm that had pulled crowds out of their seats. June stepped past him, shut the door, and laid the contract on the bed like a verdict. "I'm not signing," she said. "And you're not signing either." He laughed once, then saw her face. The laugh died. "June, you don't get to decide that." "The next show will kill you," she answered. "I won't stand under the lights and watch you die to applause." His temper rose fast, fueled by fear and pride. He paced, voice climbing. He said she was trying to control him, that she liked him weak because it made her necessary. Then he went for the deepest cut, that nobody would pay to hear her without him, that she was lucky to be on the same posters, that she was a pretty harmony line in a man's world. June didn't flinch. She didn't defend her name or the Carter legacy. She simply watched him talk himself into ugliness, as if she wanted him to hear it too. When he finally ran out of breath, she picked up her purse. He expected a slam, a curse, some theatrical exit he could blame later. Instead, she left quietly. The silence she closed behind her felt louder than his shouting. Morning brought a headache and shame that had nothing to do with alcohol. Johnny found her note under the ashtray, written in neat, careful strokes. "When you decide life matters more than fame, you know where to find me. June." He told himself she was bluffing. He told himself he didn't need her. By afternoon, he was on a bus anyway, without June, without her steady gaze, chasing the tour like it was oxygen. The first 5 shows went bad in different ways. Missed cues, sudden rages, a voice that cracked from strain and pills. Marshall Grant stared at him as if he'd lost a brother. W.S. Holland muttered, almost to himself. She was right. On the 6th night, Omaha, Johnny walked on stage with a grin too wide, eyes glassy, words slipping away mid-verse. The band tried to pull him back into the song, but he drifted like a man underwater. When the crowd began to turn, he snapped. He yanked the guitar from his shoulder and hurled it toward the front rows. Security moved fast, not gentle, guiding him off while people booed the myth that had failed them. The next morning, the headlines were blunt. almost eager. His career was finished. Johnny stared at the paper in a diner booth, hands shaking, and realized June's no had been the last door that wasn't locked. October came without ceremony, no tour buses, no schedules taped to walls, just empty hours and a phone that wouldn't stop ringing. Johnny Cash disappeared the way men do when they're finished explaining themselves. He didn't tell his family. He didn't tell the band. He drove south through Tennessee with the radio off, swallowing miles and whatever pills were left in his pocket, until the road narrowed and the trees leaned close. People looked for him loudly. Police filed reports. Private eyes asked the wrong questions. June did none of it. She remembered a story he'd told once, late and unguarded, about a cave near the river where he'd hidden as a boy, a place where the dark felt honest. She stayed away because she'd promised not to interfere again. If he wanted to die, she would not chase him into it. Nickajack Cave swallowed sound. Johnny parked near an old entrance, took a flashlight, and nothing else. No jacket, no rope, no note. The plan was simple in the way despair always is. Walk until the batteries died, then lie down and let the quiet finish the job. He moved through tunnels carved by water older than names, boots scraping stone, breath echoing back at him like another man following close. 3 hours in, the light thinned. When it went out, it was complete. No glow, no outline, no mercy. Johnny lay on the rock floor and waited. His mind filled the dark with images he couldn't control. Teeth crumbling from pills, insects crawling under his skin, the sound of his daughters laughing somewhere he couldn't reach. He told himself this was peace. Then he felt air. Not imagination. Movement, cool against his face. Instinct broke through the fog. He crawled, palms shredding on stone, jacket tearing, knees bruising against the cave's teeth. He followed that thin breath of wind until a crack widened and spilled him out into trees and dawn. The sky was pale, unfinished. He lay there shaking, alive against his own intention. By the jeep, someone sat on the hood wrapped in a coat that wasn't warm enough. June stood when she saw him, eyes tired, face set with relief she didn't perform. "How did you know?" he asked, voice raw. "You told me once," she said. "About hiding here. I just knew." She didn't ask what he'd planned. She didn't touch him until he steadied. Then she drove, not home, not to a hotel, but to a place found through a quiet doctor and quieter favors. A Christian rehab outside Madison, Tennessee. No sleek rooms, no substitutes, just prayer, work, and days that refused to hurry. Johnny balked at the gate, anger flaring one last time. June handed the papers to the administrator. "I paid for a month," she said. "My money." She turned to Johnny. "You can walk away right now, but if you do, you won't see me again. Ever." Inside, the days were brutal. His body revolted, vomiting, cramps, sweat-soaking sheets. At night he saw shadows move where nothing lived. Dr. Nat Winston didn't offer relief, only routine. In 1967, recovery meant enduring what you'd built. June came every afternoon for 30 minutes. She sat. Sometimes she read aloud. Often she said nothing at all. She didn't save him. She watched him choose, again and again, to stay. The third day broke him open. Johnny woke convinced the walls were breathing, mirrors bending his face into something demonic. He ripped them down with bare hands, glass exploding across the floor, screaming that the room was full of things crawling toward him. Orderlies pinned him until the storm passed. Dr. Nat Winston stood in the doorway, calm, unmoved. No sedatives, no substitutes. "You feel it," he said. "That's the point." Pain had a schedule now. It came in waves, cramps that folded him in half, sweat that soaked the mattress, visions of spiders tunneling under his skin. He lost 8 pounds in a week. Food turned to ash in his mouth. Nights stretched endlessly, the dark alive with whispers promising relief if he'd just quit trying. At exactly 3 every afternoon, June arrived. Same chair, same place by the door. She read from the Bible in a steady voice that refused drama. When he cursed her, she stayed. When he begged, she stayed. When he said he hated her, she stayed. Presence without negotiation. On the 8th night, he ran, climbed the fence barefoot, tore his hands open on the wire, hit the highway running toward Nashville with nothing but a hospital shirt and terror pushing him forward. After 6 miles, his lungs burned raw. He collapsed outside a roadside diner and begged truckers for $1. One man stared longer than the rest. "You're Johnny Cash," he said. Johnny nodded, humiliation hotter than the withdrawal. The man didn't give him money. He opened the passenger door. Johnny assumed Nashville. Instead, the truck turned back. The driver said only, "My son plays music. He still believes in you. I won't be the one who kills that." He dropped Johnny at the clinic gates at 4 a.m. June was sitting on the steps, wrapped in a coat, eyes red from no sleep. She didn't ask why he'd come back. She held out a blanket. "You're cold," she said. "Go inside." By day 17, the shaking eased. His stomach settled. Dr. Winston put him to work on the farm, cleaning stalls, feeding chickens, hauling buckets of water through mud that swallowed his boots. One morning, Johnny stood knee-deep in filth and started crying. Not from shame, from clarity. This was the first honest work he'd done in a decade, and it didn't ask him to pretend. On the 24th day, June's mother arrived. Mother Maybelle Carter sat across from him in the cafeteria, studied him in silence that felt like judgment. Then she spoke, quiet and sharp. "My daughter is risking everything for you. If you fail her again, I will make sure you never set foot on a stage. I have the means." She left without waiting for an answer. Day 30 came gray and final. Dr. Winston called him conditionally clean. A year of watchfulness ahead. Johnny packed and waited for June. Marshall Grant arrived instead, face tight. Columbia Records had cut him loose. Official letters citing broken obligations. Unofficial truth leaked to the press. Rehab. The myth was bad for business. Johnny sat on the bed, hands steady for once, and felt the weight of it. Sober, unemployed, unwanted. The urge didn't vanish. It whispered at night. But for the first time, he understood the fight wasn't over, and that surviving it would cost him everything except his life. 47 days clean felt longer than the previous 10 years combined. Johnny lived alone in the house at Cassim Bay, Tennessee, waking before dawn with his heart racing, reaching for pills that were no longer there. The divorce papers with Vivian moved through lawyers like slow poison, each envelope costing money he didn't have. Columbia was gone, at least on paper. His agent made calls that went nowhere. Silence replaced applause, and silence was dangerous. June kept distance on purpose. 1 meeting a week. Coffee, not dinners. No photographs together. She watched him like a doctor watches a patient after surgery, alert for signs of infection, unwilling to promise recovery. Johnny hated it and needed it at the same time. The phone rang at 2:30 a.m., one cold January night. He nearly didn't answer. The voice on the line was calm, almost casual. "My name's Bob Johnston. I'm the new producer at Columbia." Johnny sat up, convinced this was a hallucination, the kind that came when the brain wanted escape. Johnston kept talking. He'd reviewed Johnny's contract. Someone had forged a signature on the termination. Legally, the deal still stood. "If you want," he said, "we can make a record." Johnny waited for the room to tilt. It didn't. At dawn, he called Columbia himself. Johnston was real. The forgery was real, too. Someone inside had wanted him erased. For the first time in months, the future cracked open instead of closing. Johnston's idea was reckless and perfect. A live album. Inside Folsom Prison. No polish. No safety net. Johnny said yes without asking about radio or charts. He'd spent nights in cells himself. Short stays, but long enough to know the smell of bars and boredom. He understood cages. Columbia gave them $3,000. Enough for rented gear, a van, and a skeleton crew. Nothing else. No retakes. One microphone. Johnny counted the band members and shook his head. It barely worked. He drove to June with the truth first. "I can't pay you," he said. "I need your voice anyway." She waited a full minute before answering. "What do I get?" "Nothing," he said. "This could fail. It might be my last chance. I just want you there." She studied him, searching for the old manipulation and finding something steadier. "I'll go," she said, "but not as decoration. As an equal." January 13th, 1968. Folsom Prison. 2 shows, morning and afternoon. At 9:40 a.m., Johnny stood behind the stage, hands trembling, 57 days sober and terrified. June came up behind him and took his hand. "Look at them," she said. "They're where you were." The first concert hit like a storm. Inmates shouted, laughed, leaned forward as if music were oxygen. During Jackson, something shifted between Johnny and June. Visible, undeniable. The room felt it. In the break between shows, in the warden's office turned dressing room, Johnny dropped to one knee. The ring cost $15 from a roadside shop. "I want to be better," he said. "With you." June's answer was soft and devastating. "No, not yet. Ask me in a year." The buzzer sounded. Time for the second show. Johnny walked back on stage and tore into Folsom Prison Blues like it was a confession carved into stone. That version would live forever. By February, whispers about the album reached radio stations. Demos were requested. Columbia reversed its fear quietly. There was still no money, but hope had a pulse again. And that night, alone, Johnny felt the strongest urge to use since rehab. He didn't. Success returned quietly at first, like an animal testing unfamiliar ground. Before At Folsom Prison was even released, Columbia sensed momentum and moved fast. Meetings resumed. Smiles came back. By February 1968, Johnny was offered something unimaginable a year earlier, his own television program on ABC, The Johnny Cash Show. Prime time. 2 years guaranteed. One condition written between every line: absolute sobriety. Johnny signed knowing the ink was a leash. Fame had rules now. June stayed careful. They worked together, rehearsed, traveled, but went home separately. No performances of domestic bliss, no safety net made of romance. Johnny understood why, even when it hurt. May detonated everything. At Folsom Prison hit #1 in the country charts and broke into the Billboard Top 20. Critics who'd buried him months earlier scrambled for new language. But Johnny didn't celebrate the way they expected. He skipped after parties, refused bars, walked past open bottles like they were live wires. Industry people whispered that something was wrong with him. June 1968. London, Ontario. 10,000 people packed into the arena. June joined him for Jackson. Halfway through the song, Johnny stopped singing. The band froze. The crowd murmured. He turned to June, microphone shaking in his hand. "There's something I want to ask you. Right here, so you can't avoid it. He dropped to one knee. I love you. Will you marry me? Time stretched thin. Cameras rolled. June's face hardened, not with surprise, but with anger. 6 months sober, not a year. He'd broken their agreement, publicly, deliberately. She said nothing. 15 seconds passed, an eternity under stage lights. Then she nodded once. The arena erupted. Backstage, the truth landed harder than applause. You promised, she said. 1 year. Johnny didn't apologize. That scared her more. I remember, he said, but I stopped waiting for permission to live. If you meant yes out there, I need to know. If not, say it now. She saw it then. Not desperation. Certainty. Still, fear clawed at her. What if you fall again? Then you leave, he said, and I'll own it. But I won't live inside what if. They married quietly on March 1st, 1968, in a small Baptist church in Franklin, Kentucky. 40 guests, no spectacle. Johnny wore black because it was just a suit. June's dress was sewn by her mother in 2 days. During his vows, Johnny added his own words. He didn't promise perfection. He promised effort. Daily. Summer burned the honeymoon away. Television rehearsals swallowed time. A BC wanted edge, chaos. The old Johnny. He gave them restraint and conviction. Executives panicked. A week before the first broadcast, Johnny found an envelope in his dressing room. No name. Inside, 10 amphetamine pills and a note, in case nerves get bad. From a friend. He stared at it for 5 minutes, then handed it to June. She flushed them without a word. Someone wants you broken, she said. Don't give them the win. Paranoia crept in. Someone close, someone trusted. For the first time in months, the craving came from stress, not memory. November. The show aired. Ratings were fine. Critics weren't. Too soft, they wrote. Too religious. A BC hesitated. Columbia worried. That night, Johnny sat on the bathroom floor, shaking. Not from withdrawal, but doubt. June joined him on the tile. Maybe sober Johnny isn't marketable, she said. He waited for comfort. She didn't offer it. But alive Johnny, she added, is the only one worth loving. By December 1968, the show was wobbling. Ratings slipped week by week, never collapsing, never lifting. A BC talked in careful sentences about adjustments. Columbia wanted something louder, sharper, proof that sober Johnny Cash could still cut through noise. Johnny felt it as pressure behind the eyes, a familiar hum that once demanded pills. He had been clean 11 months. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like losing slowly. The idea came from desperation dressed as courage, a prison special. Not Folsom again, that would smell like retreat, but San Quentin. Harder, meaner. Television cameras inside one of the most dangerous prisons in California. Columbia pushed back immediately. 1 prison had been risk. 2 would look like panic. Bob Johnston argued for truth instead of optics. This isn't repetition, he said. This is escalation. February 24, 1969. An hour before the show, a guard pulled Johnny aside. Among the inmates was Merle Haggard. Young, furious, serving a long sentence. He hated Johnny Cash, called him a tourist in pain, a man who borrowed prison stories without paying the years. Haggard had told others he'd shut the show down if Cash played saint. Johnny scanned the yard from behind the curtain and saw him. 3rd row, jaw locked, eyes daring him to lie. When Johnny walked out, the air was sharp with distrust. 1,000 men watched, unmoved. He could have leaned on hits. Instead, he talked. About Starkville. About a guard smashing his guitar. About sitting in a cell convinced life was over. Then he said the thing no one expected. "I don't know your prison. I know mine. And mine was in my head." No cheers, no boos, just attention. Then he launched into a new song, angry, reckless, aimed straight at the walls around them. "San Quentin, I hate every inch of you." Guards stiffened, inmates exploded. The room cracked open. In the third row, Haggard stood and applauded. Johnny didn't stop there. He turned toward June at the side of the stage and told the truth, unscripted, that he'd wanted to die, that pills had almost won, that one person hadn't saved him, but had shown him he was worth saving himself. June stepped forward, stunned. Cameras caught faces in the crowd, grown men crying without shame, because no one had ever told them change was their choice. After the show, a guard brought Haggard to him. "I was wrong," he said. "You're not fake. You're just locked up different." Johnny told him he'd be a musician one day, to come find him. March. The episode aired. Ratings spiked higher than ever. Critics abandoned their complaints. A BC extended the contract. Columbia asked for another album. The industry pivoted overnight. Sober Johnny was suddenly valuable. April evening, Tennessee. A lake behind the house, quiet enough to hear insects. Johnny held a small bundle in his hand. 10 pills, kept for months. June stared at them. "Why?" "So I'd know I was choosing," he said. He walked to the edge of the porch and threw them into the water. Sat back down. "I don't know if I'm happy," he said. "I know," she answered. They watched the sun drop. For the first time in 15 years, Johnny Cash wasn't afraid of tomorrow. Not because he wouldn't fall, but because he knew he would stand back up.